Welcome to A Safe Place, a podcast where we talk about school gun violence and how to keep kids safe in schools. My name is Lewis. I am the host and the author of four upcoming books now: A Safe Place, How to Prevent the Next School Shooting, and The Ultimate School Shooting Reference Guide, Volumes 1 through 3. That is a mouthful, but I am thrilled today to introduce to you Mr. Clayton Cranford. He is the author of Parenting in the Digital World. It's currently in its third edition, and it's now going to be available in Spanish. And he's also known as the Cyber Safety Cop. He is the founder of Total Safety Solutions, an organization that was established in 2012. And Mr. Cranford, I'm so thrilled to have you here today.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Excellent. So, just really quick about your book. I was congratulating you on having the third edition made. I imagine it constantly has to be revised with all the new changes in technology, especially with the whole AI thing coming out. And now you have it in Spanish, and you said someone's working on it in Vietnamese.
Yeah, so I'm working with Garden Grove Unified School District, which has a very large Vietnamese population. They butt up against Westminster, California, which also has a very large Vietnamese population. So
Nice.
yeah, their translators are working on it, and I didn't realize kind of how complex it is because I mean, one they got to make sure that everything's just right, and there's a lot of technical things in there, but there's language kind of rooted back in the communist Vietnamese
Mm.
era, and so they got to make sure like that language, so it's just there's like kind of a cultural piece that I really
Ah.
wasn't aware of, but yeah, hopefully this school year it'll be completed, and yeah, I'm excited about that. If we can get this out in more languages, especially um, families where parents don't speak English at all, or maybe not as their first language, there's a huge gap, just language wise, but then also technology wise. And
Right.
we do speak to a lot of um, Hispanic parents that only speak Spanish. We have an instructor who's a native Spanish speaker, and yeah, any community where those parents um, don't speak English, they're really struggling. Like all parents are struggling, but they
Right.
have like another layer. So we're trying to bridge that gap for them.
Do you find that those different communities that you're trying to target as well, that are they experiencing similar challenges as those kids that are their native English speakers in terms of internet safety?
Oh, it's much more complicated for them because they kind of just rely on their kids for so many things when it because their kids are like in a lot of ways translating things for them, right? So they're kind of their kid will read them a form that they need for the DMV, whatever it is. Like they really rely on their kids who are kind of native speakers, and so when it comes to their technology, it's kind of the same thing. They're relying on their kids to make good choices, and their kids are able to, because of the language barrier, are actually more easily able to hide inappropriate behavior, and
Right.
then that parent gets pulled in to the school because something horrible's happened, and they're just very much underserved in this
Right.
area.
Yes.
And we're really kind of burdened by that, to be honest, and we're trying to bring in more instructors that are bilingual, but most of these school districts have um, interpreters. So if it's me and I'll go there, they'll have the headsets for the parents, and they'll have a person in the back interpreting. So we want as many parents to get this message as possible.
That's excellent. So it's a wonderful service that you're providing. I'm a librarian. I've been teaching technology classes for 13 years. And so I know exactly what you're talking about in terms of, language barrier. It's not even just language barrier, it's just the gap between technology knowledge. I mean, I was helping
Mhm.
an an elderly person from Bangladesh a couple of days ago. And, he's just trying to get an entry level, basic job and everything. And he's never submitted an application online. And so I can only imagine how a lot of these kids are able, like you said, hide their behavior when their parents are struggling just for the basics in terms of, just getting on the computer, how to use the mouse, how to how to send
Yeah.
an email, how to send an attachment, much less, what kinds of things are putting on their profiles on social media that they don't even know exist, much less will even touch. Matter of fact, that brings me to my the next question I was going to ask you. I just happened to stumble upon one of your posts on LinkedIn a few weeks ago, and you had this very valuable post about keeping kids safe online, specifically what parents need to do to make sure that children's social media bios do not include certain information. Could you elaborate on that and explain why that's so important?
Yeah, because if your child's account is private, which it should be,
Mhm.
which means that all the posts, the comments, and all those are kind of behind this wall, right? Which to some degree is an illusion, but a privacy. But the bio and the bio image is public to everyone.
Mhm.
So we just want to caution parents, especially when they're really parents need to be a part of this conversation. They need to help their child, mentor their child,
Right.
setting up their accounts, and then kind of checking in and making sure that things are set up in a way that are safe. And yeah, so we don't want students putting in their bio like where they go to school, where they live, other personal information like that might compromise them because again it's public and there's a lot of issues going on right now with children, and maybe the number one issues that when kids get hurt online by strangers that they've allowed this person into their life and shared personal things with them, and
Wow.
that's usually the gateway, right? So that's just yeah, that's one thing that
Mhm.
parents need to be concerned about. Maybe not. I would if I would put down a list of things that really parents need to be concerned about, it wouldn't be um, that wouldn't be the highest thing, but that's definitely one little thing that we just that's why we have the emails and the stories that we do online. It's so much to absorb, right? There's so much stuff going on. And even when I do my parent talk, it's like 90 minutes. And if a parent wants to watch it on I have a digital parenting 101 video that's kind of like a master class, like it's a bunch of segments that you can watch,
Right.
and there's just so many things. So we don't want to overwhelm parents. So we just kind of shoot out little things. Say, hey, just a little reminder. Maybe take a look at this.
Yes.
And those things are just kind of details.
Hmm.
But the big issues, the really big issues, are the things that we talk about, like in our presentations at schools.
Now, how do you find that parents are reacting to that? When you're trying to inform them and get them more, educated as far as what to look for and how to keep their kids safe? Are they being responsive, or do they feel like they're overwhelmed and are their eyes glazing over? I mean, what's going on?
Well, they're overwhelmed for sure. I mean, I'm a parent who has two boys in college, so I'm a different kind of overwhelmed. It's your parenting doesn't stop when your kid it just changes when your kid gets older. But for sure, a parent who has a teen and they're driving them to baseball practice and they got another kid going to volleyball practice, and they're just kind of going nuts. And yeah, there's a lot going on. So that's for sure. And I think because of that, parents to some degree kind of throw their hands up in the air and they're like, this is too much. Like,
Yeah.
I got to monitor my kids' online presence and I got to talk to them about all this stuff.
Hmm.
And our message to parents right now is a really strong message of waiting with regards to social media and phones. And
What do you mean by waiting?
well, so there's a lot of strong evidence. A lot of this is still kind of being worked out, and there's a lot of causal. I'm sorry, there's a lot of correlational kind of evidence showing that the use of smartphones and social media is impacting children's mental health. And I think the evidence is so strong, and with the lack of kind of any other explanation for it, I find it very factual. And so, what we have is, starting. So I was a school resource officer in the early 2010s,
Nice.
and I was, knee deep in, my middle school of, 1,400 students. I had 14,000 students in my city. I was the one and only school resource officer. So I kind of saw this happening real time. And what happened is, from 2010 to 2014, we went from 20% of teens having smartphones to 80, almost 90% of teens having smartphones.
Uh,
And in 2014, the iPhone 4 comes out with the forward-facing camera, which
right.
really changes the relationship that children have with their phones because now they're taking selfies, right?
Absolutely.
And
Yeah.
with Snapchat looking at that camera. So what we saw was when we are with the standardized survey that we give students every year. It's forecasting the future, or it's the name of it's escaping. But we give a survey to students every year, And the questions are like, in the last 30 days, have you used marijuana? In the last 30 days, have you used alcohol? The last 30 days, have you thought about hurting yourself? Things like that.
Right.
And in that survey, so we're tracking those responses, especially with their mental health.
Hmm.
And leading up to 2010, if we're to look at anxiety and depression, the percent of students who are saying that they are they're anxious, or they've experienced a major depressive episode in the last 30 days, that line is flat. So that doesn't change a whole lot.
Okay.
And then going to 2010, it makes like a 30 degree angle up. And especially in 2014, it really cranks up. And it's been going up like that since then, to the tune of for girls who say they've had a major depressive episode in the last 30 days, it's up about 130% for girls since 2010, and 161% for boys. Boys are, although girls are hit harder, but boys, that percentage is larger because they started so low. So they're not quite as worse off as girls are because of their relationship with social media. But what we have is a complete collapse of our children's mental health going on right now. The number of girls who are hospitalized for non-suicidal self-injury, also known as cutting and other types of mutilation,
Right.
is up 188% since 2010. I can go on. So the point,
But
suicide
what is
and
it when in terms of mental health, are they is it because of how what's the word? How aggressive some people are being in terms of, putting them down, or is it because
no,
they're
actually,
seeing
well,
these
I think
beautiful
that's
people and they can't compare and there's no way they
yes.
can compete?
It is that. It's actually kind of both those things, but it's a little more amorphic than that because you have boys by and large kind of gravitating towards gaming and girls gravitating towards Instagram. And so yeah, when we look at girls using Instagram, it's the comparative thing that's happening. It's the I'm not adding up compared to the image that they're looking at. There's a lot of the way girls treat each other online is really rough, and they're if a girl's on Instagram, they're way more likely to have eating disorders and thinking
Wow.
about hurting themselves, and actually hurting themselves. So the problem's kind of complicated because there's so many overlapping things. But the bottom line is this: is that giving your child a smartphone while they're going through puberty
Mm.
is um is a recipe for disaster. Because
Right.
at the same time in 2010, when we gave the same technology was given to the millennials who were in their kind of early 20s out of adolescence. Their mental health didn't change a whole lot. So if we look at the difference of anxiety, and if we were to look at the different strata of ages, the 18 to 25s are the highest. And then if you just kind of drop down, tens, by 10 blocks of 10 age groups until you get down to the 50s, people
Mhm.
50 plus, about their anxiety has actually gone down
Okay.
8% since 2010, but everybody else has gone up, but not quite as bad as the Gen Z's, my children,
Right.
the children who are now in their early 20s.
That's interesting.
So, and then we have parents giving phones to the next crop of children at earlier and earlier ages. And I see this because I'm going to schools and we do presentations for assemblies at schools. And a handful of years ago, I had schools saying, "Well, Clay, will you come and talk to our first, second, and third graders, our kindergartners?" And I'm like, "Why would I talk to your littles about phones and social media? Because
Yeah.
they have them." So now we go and we talk to kids, and the first thing that we do is we ask them, raise your hand if you have a phone. And I'm talking to kinders through third, and nearly half the hands go up. So these kids are not buying these phones. They're not stealing these phones. They're not finding them on the way to school in a bush
Right.
or something. Their parents are giving it to them, but the parents are doing it not understanding that this is the reason why kids are failing in all the really important ways, and like not thriving and not launching
Mhm.
and really struggling with their social skills and all those things because the maybe the over if I were to put this in like a nutshell, it would be children have traded real life informative developmental experiences
Mhm.
with online counterfeit experiences that are kind of analogous, right? Like having a friendship, looking at someone in the eye and having that back and forth relationship that like maybe like you and I had when we were children.
Right.
They've now changed and had that online.
Okay.
Instead of maybe having a few friends, they have lots of friends online, but
Right.
they're these online relationships where there's no risk,
Right.
right? There's no give and
Yes.
take.
Hmm.
They don't have to walk up to another person and ask them out to the dance,
Right.
right? And deal with the anxiety. And I remember the first time I asked a girl on the dance, she said no.
Right.
And I
Right.
felt really horrible. And but you know what? I couldn't give up. There was no choice.
I'm
Like,
laughing because I can relate, not because of your. I'm not
yeah,
laughing
no, of
at your
course.
situation.
Everybody born before this, Gen Z crowd understands like what that means.
Right.
But our kids don't. And now they're retreating further and further into the digital world because now they're replacing intimacy with pornography. They're replacing friendships with, AI friends or AI boyfriend girlfriends. And
Yeah, that blows my mind.
um and so
The
now they
concept of that
really
blows my mind.
it is crazy, and they really really struggle. But the experiences online are getting better, like with virtual reality. Like everything's getting a little bit better, but it's still a counterfeit, right? It's not, it's like a counterfeit dollar. It looks real. You can maybe use it, maybe you can buy something with it, but it doesn't really hold value. And
Right.
eventually you'll get found out and it won't work out well for you. These experiences are the same thing. So why risk humiliation when you can just retreat into the digital world and talk to someone as an avatar and not worry if they say no to you because you're just like, well, whatever, and just like flick, you turn off the game and then you reboot and now you're a different
Right.
person. You try it again.
Exactly.
So
Now,
that's kind of
is
where
that
we're at.
is that why today I noticed you posted your latest podcast about schools that are planning to ban phones from usage, and you said that that might be a good decision. I imagine that's specifically
Yeah.
why.
Yeah, it's a great decision. It's actually when the kind of our when we get to the end of our parent presentation, we kind of lay out our but basically it's 90 minutes of laying out a really strong case for why we need to make some hard choices here.
Mm.
um and also very informative, like what are these different apps, what do they do, things like that, how do you talk to your kid about porn, etc. But at the end we're basically like these are, if you want to turn this around, if you want to turn around and get our kids back to the like pre 2010 mental health levels, which I think we can,
Hmm.
um or we can get close to it, is one of the things is no phones in schools, bell to bell. And I think there's strong evidence. There's some research and stuff coming out, some meta-analysis showing that um, kids, for one, are going to be less anxious. They're going to learn. They're going to be less distracted. I did a conference at a major school safety conference this summer, and I surveyed more than 250 people in the audience, and they said one of their major issues is distraction with
Okay.
these devices.
Yeah, that makes perfect
and
sense.
and the problem is parents, and that's why like when you ask me, how are parents taking all this, parents are fighting this decisions. Parents, when I tell parents your child should not have a smartphone until high school
Right.
and they shouldn't have social media until 16, I got some parents crossing their arms. They're just
Oh, I
like,
bet. I bet. Yeah.
they're like, I can't do that.
Right.
And I'm like, wait a minute. If Steve Jobs, if he had stood up in 2008 and said, "Hey, this is the iPhone. This is going to be amazing." Of course, no one understood like how important or revolutionary it was going to be. But if he said, "This phone is going to make your life a lot easier and kind of cooler in a lot of ways, but if you give it to your kid, the chances of them committing suicide is going to like go up two times, like 200%. Like their anxiety depression is going to almost double." Like
Right.
if I think if he had said that, I think a lot of parents have been like, no, no, we're not doing this.
We're not touching the
We're not touching
iPhone.
it. But
Yeah.
now that it's here and it's so ubiquitous,
Right.
parents kind of feel like, well, if I don't do it, like I'm a bad parent. Like my kid's going to be ostracized
Hmm.
if they walk in as a freshman at a high school and they don't have a smartphone. And I understand that sentiment. However, um, you can't ignore this, and this is a radical problem that requires kind of a radical response. And I think if parents, what I really would like more than anything, if I could wave a magic wand, and that magic wand, let's say if I couldn't just make us all this stuff, magically disappear,
Right.
but let's say I could just make parents all get together in every community and just say, we as a parent group at this school, we're just going to say, like at a middle school, we're just going to say no smartphones here
Right.
at all.
Hmm.
And if you have a kid who needs a phone that's in middle school, give them a flip phone or give them a smartwatch, but
Okay.
not something connected to apps in the internet. And if parents would do that, and if they would also commit to saying no smartphones till high school, no social media till 16. If we did that and no phones in school, and monitor your kid when you give them a phone with like something like Our Pact, which I think is a great app.
What is it called?
It's called Our Pact,
Okay. And
OURPACT.
what is that?
So you install it on your kid's phone, and it works. And one of the great things about it that it works really well on an iPhone, which is a struggle with iPhone's operating system. But basically, it runs in the background. It makes the screen time limits a breeze.
Hmm.
You can get full control over what apps your child has and when they can use them. So
Okay.
like if you had a kid going to school and with a smartphone, and you only wanted him to be able or her to have phone and text and
Hmm.
maybe like a couple of apps that they need for school, but basically turning off all social media, turning off the game apps while they're at school. You could do that with this. You could just shut those down between 8 and like 3. You could
Right.
or on demand. And then the other cool thing is if your kid is on an app or whatever they're on, you can actually turn on this ability to screen capture periodically what they're doing, and it runs it through image recognition.
Hmm.
And if it comes up with something that's problematic, it gives you an alert. So it's kind of running the background, checking things. You can also see where they're on a map. It's kind of like Life 360 is another app, but it kind of integrates some of those things. So
Right.
it's just like one of these things that for the price of going to Starbucks once a month,
Mm.
you can make your kids super safe. In fact, I'll share a link with you,
Yeah, that'd
and
be great.
if you have show notes, you can put in there, and my link will get parents 10% off
Oh, wow.
the
Okay,
subscription,
great.
which is
Yeah,
a
that's
great deal.
great. Thank you.
So, but you know, I just it's just like I spent a lot of time in my presentation just breaking down the I think unreasonable arguments that parents have
Mm.
for why their kid needs a phone in school
Hmm.
when they don't. They don't need a phone in school. Those phones should be put into like a phone locker when they walk into school and taken out when they leave. I
Right.
think that would be the best thing. But even at LAUSD, which is the largest school district here in California,
Uh-huh.
they're doing that. However, they're being sued by parents. So
Wow.
I think hopefully there's going to be a state law here in California passed.
Okay.
And if that happens, then it'll kind of
A state
make all this
law
much easier.
banning,
Banning phones in
requiring.
schools.
Wow. That's amazing.
It would be.
I know
It would
that's
be.
extremely hard. I mean, because there's so many divisive politics going on, including and especially in school systems. I mean, during COVID, I moved here from Florida to Virginia recently, and during COVID, gosh, my mother was or still is, a substitute teacher in the schools, and she would just tell me all the arguments that the parents would be having with the school administrators over masks, over trying to protect other kids from getting sick, basically. And just, I mean, I can only imagine what they say about the cell phone. So that app that you mentioned, do you find that it does seem to make it easier for parents to be able to monitor what their kids are doing online?
Yeah, it helps monitor, but also one of the big issues is screen time. So there's a strong correlation between the amount of time your child spends on social media and their likelihood to have a suicidal related outcome.
Okay.
So if more than 2 hours a day, when they go to 3 hours a day on social media, it jumps up like a third more likely to have a suicidal related outcome. And then if they're on 5 hours, they're 48% more likely.
Wow.
So limiting the amount of time is a very good idea. And I think most kids would even tell you that doom scrolling on Instagram or TikTok's not healthy for them. They would say that.
Yeah.
So it does make that much simpler because you don't have to have an argument with your kid. It just shuts their phone down.
Now, is there
You know what I mean?
like a laptop equivalent of that? So, like, if a parent is out to work and their kid is on the computer all day long and they're not home, is there a service or an app that is equivalent?
There's um well the operating systems on laptops do have some time limiting features, and I mentioned that in my book. But you may want to look into a router that gives you that ability. The problem is your kid can hotspot it off their phone if they have a smartphone. So
Hmm.
there's always ways around this. There is a really good router called Griffin
Hmm.
that has a lot of parental controls,
Okay.
and but yeah, so there I can't think of something for a laptop per se.
But in terms of allowing a parent to easily monitor the activities of what their child might be doing.
Yeah, laptops are a little bit of a little bit more difficult. So m most
Okay.
apps that you find that do that are mobile devices, like a
Okay.
laptop, or I'm sorry, an iPad or a phone.
Okay. And I hate to put you on the spot. I just wanted to ask, do you have any like any stories that just kind of pop out in your head where somebody actually followed your advice? Like let's say they got the app and to limit the screen time and where they had a positive experience. How that may have helped, their child or helped their relationship or help their self-esteem, mental health, anything like that.
Oh yeah. Well, the funny thing about this is that the calls that I usually get from parents is after something bad's happened. I don't get a lot of parents calling and say this really worked out well. But yeah, I have had that. Yeah, so we had a parent who put the Hour Pact, actually put Hour Pact on his kid's phone,
Hmm.
and immediately the kid's like, what is this? Why is this on my phone? He's a middle schooler.
Uh-huh.
And the parents like, well, we got to come up with a healthy way of, spending time
Right.
and on your device.
Okay.
And the conversation, and really it just kind of created this opportunity for a conversation. The conversation is, this kid's like, I don't need a limit on my time. And this parent had, I've written an article about this.
Mm.
And in fact, I'm doing a webinar tomorrow night, that people can watch about this as well. Like, how do you talk to your kid about this? But basically, the kid's like, I don't need this. And the parent's like, well, I kind of noticed that, that you're waking up in the morning, and kind of tired and not prepared. And I'm thinking that you might be on your phone too late at night. And the kid's like, no, no, I don't have that problem. And the parent's like, well, why don't we just try this? Let's have this thing turn off your phone at 7 and or 8, whatever it was, and that's an hour before you go to bed. And let's just try that for a week
Mm.
and just see how it goes, and then we'll
Wow.
talk about it again. And the kid's like, okay, like it's hard for the kid to say really no to that, or maybe it wasn't a week, maybe it was like 3 or 4 days.
Right.
Let's just try for 3 days. And instead of saying we're going to do, like, the other option, the parent could have said we're just going to do this.
Right.
And now this kid is put in a situation where he doesn't feel like he's in control or part of the solution.
Yes.
It's in a kind of adversarial situation. And what parents need to understand is your kid has options. If you say no to your kid, they may try to find a way around it. But really, what you want to do is generate voluntary compliance.
That's
And this is a
interesting. That's interesting
yeah.
perspective because I come from a Caribbean style family parenting, and I like you're gonna do what I say, or I'm taking away. Period. You're just not gonna
That,
have it. Period.
that was my parents. Yeah, my
Yeah.
parents were 1950s, post World War II parents, and they were uh, parented that way, and that's how they parented me.
Right.
And but I didn't have an option.
Right.
My parents said no, that was it. Like, but kids now, if you're saying no to the internet, or social media, your kid can find other ways around this.
Right. And so
So
what
what
happened after the 3 or 4 days?
the kid felt better. He's like, yeah, you know what? I do feel better. I do feel better. I wake up in the morning. I feel, and so it's just like any of the things that I'm like in my book, there's a bunch of things that I encourage parents to do, or in my presentation, but don't do everything at once. Try one thing with your kid and have a conversation with them or her where they feel like they're part of the conversation, and they're
That's
not just
perfect.
sitting on the receiving end of this deal that they don't feel like there's no buy-in for them. And yeah, the more that you can do that, it's actually the same techniques that I learned as a crisis negotiator. I was on the hostage or crisis negotiation team in the sheriff's department.
Wow.
And if you want someone to do something that they don't want to do, like you want them to leave that building that they're inside when it's surrounded by police, um, the thing you don't do is tell them, get out now. Listen to what I'm saying and just do it. and
Right.
because they're not going to do that. What
Yeah.
you need to do is listen to them. How are you feeling? What's going on? Like, how did you find yourself here today? Like, what's,
Right.
and they want to be heard, and then you come up with some options for them. Well, we could do this, this, or this, but all three of those options are options that I'm okay with. But it gives that person the sense or the feeling that they have some control over what's happening to them. And when people feel that way, including your kid, they're more likely to go with it and actually support that game plan.
That's powerful. That's brilliant. And the fact that you're able to transition those skills as a negotiator into
Well,
parenting.
telling your kid to put down their phone does feel like a hostage negotiation a little bit.
Right. That is fascinating. I would never consider that. So I know we're running. Oh, gosh, we're so quick. Time is running out. But that was a really great golden nugget, I think, for parents in general. You mentioned you have a webinar going on tomorrow, and so if people wanted to learn more about you and they wanted to go to the webinar and they want to get your book, where can they find out more information?
My website at cybersafetycop.com. We have a monthly webinar for anyone to watch. It's at 5:30 Pacific Standard Time. So yeah, get the link on the website, check it out. And then there's just a ton of free information for parents on the website. We have ebooks about how to talk to your kid about various things, including pornography and Snapchat and so forth. So yeah, by all means, check it out and drop me an email if you have a question.
All right, Clayton, this was an absolute pleasure. I hope I get to chat with you again. Is the third version of your book, is it currently out right now?
It is, and the best place to find that is on my website.
Okay.
The physical book and the ebook is available off my website.
Okay, so that's Parenting in the Digital World, third edition, now available in Spanish and soon to be in Vietnamese. Congratulations. I'm very excited for you. It was such a pleasure speaking with you. I think I could have probably talked to it for at least another hour.
Easy, easy.
So, yeah, all right. Thank you, Clayton. It was a pleasure. We'll see you soon.